It's the Accounting Influencers podcast with me, Rob Brown, where we bring you the guests from all over the world that have something to say of relevance to the accounting and fintech world. Thrilled to have with me today from the other side of the planet, Richard Francis from Spotlight Reporting. Good day to you, sir.
Good day, Rob. Thrilled to be here. Thank you. As we were just saying before we came on air, I'm kind of half in LA because we've just ended school holidays and arrived back in New Zealand where it's winter. So you're enjoying a heat wave, aren't you? Up yours?
We're enjoying the heat wave, but we're not enjoying the cricket, Richard. So let's not talk about it. Thank you very much.
Being a good Kiwi, I was actually supporting the English team. So we like to see Australia lose the cricket. So yes, I was almost as upset by the rain as you guys were.
Indeed. But actually, for people that haven't come across you, Spotlight now have a footprint in Australia, UK, New Zealand, the US. You're very much a global brand. Tell us what Spotlight do, Richard.
Yeah, so we're a suite of reporting, forecasting, consolidation tools, and a bunch of humans to help deploy those tools for great outcomes. So really, our mission from day one has been to encourage accountants and CFOs to do useful shit. In fact, that was my mission statement back in the day.
Very articulate.
Yeah, well, very, very, I suppose, Antipodean, but my background will probably give you a bit of a clue to where Spotlight came from. So I ended up coming out of university into an accounting firm, somewhat surprised, blinking in the surprise of sitting in the Hessian cubicles alongside my peers. And really from quite an early part of that career wanted to do the interesting stuff. And gravitated towards advisory work. It was called consulting back in those days, so it's morphed into advisory. And when I'd done that for a few years, and I worked for a Horwath firm that then became a BDO firm down here and ran the consulting, I really could see a gap around the whole reporting, forecasting, consolidation. Everything was desktop. It was clunky. It was hard to work with. And it was kind of a bit of a karmic situation in that Xero launched at the same time, and I knew Rod, I knew Hamish Edwards, who was an accounting buddy of mine, co-founder with Rod, and so to jump on at that really early stage of cloud innovation with Xero, turning accounting, can you believe it, into something beautiful.
Yeah.
And they opened up the API, which was genius, and of course we were one of the very first apps alongside Unleashed and Workflow Max and one or two of those other kind of early stage entrepreneurs, and we were there to fill gaps for Xero and ultimately QuickBooks and Sage and others as well. So yeah, we're kind of the software solution empowering accountants and CFOs to do useful shit for their clients, to look like rock stars, to have great conversations and help people grow businesses, free up time, make profit, and do all those good things.
It sounds great, and it sounds much needed in today's challenging world. We hear this phrase VUCA: volatility, uncertainty, complexity, ambiguity. You're nodding. Our listeners, watchers will be learning those phrases. We've used them a lot on this show. We are in interesting times, and you talk about advisory and consulting. A lot of accountants are still encamped in the compliance bread and butter. This is what we do. This is how we've always made our money. But tools like yours enable accountants to start to be more future focused. And that's surely the way it's got to be going.
Yeah, look, I'm, occasionally us software companies and people talking about advisory get accused of being anti-compliance and all of this. And I had an internet troll the other day I had to have a bit of a sparring match with on this, who was criticizing our report. And I basically said, look, there is a tremendous change happening in our profession at the moment.
Yeah.
So firms that aren't prepared to change or innovate will get a little bit left behind. It doesn't mean there isn't a lot of bread and butter compliance they can do. And in fact, HMRC, the IRD here, the IRS are great at creating new streams of compliance for accountants to make money on. So it's not about denying kind of our core function, but my vision was always, and I'm talking 25 years ago when I first came into the profession, was, I'm sitting there going, we're doing all this stuff that no one really wants to pay for, but it's like going to the dentist. Why don't we do some stuff that they actually want that can transform their lives? So that mission's driven me both in the profession. I started my own accounting practice where, for a decade, we worked with entrepreneurs and we had high value, high engagement, high touch, beautiful relationships that were advisory by nature. And what I love is that a number of those clients I had that became very, very successful, they're actually shareholders in Spotlight Reporting now. So they're kind of giving it back and holding me to account. So they show up to my AGM, and I laugh because I used to mentor them and grill them on all sorts of things. And now they show up to my AGM and do the same. So, I don't think advisory is a scary thing at all. It suits some firms more than others. Yeah. We're about empowering the firms that want to do it. If you don't want to do it, that's fine. We're also about helping CFOs with their complex challenge around things like consolidation, multi-currency, elimination, some of those grisly accounting things as well.
One of the things that Spotlight are good at, Richard, is shining a light on the future. And you've done this incredible piece of research in conjunction with Carbon that we're going to talk about today, yes, because there's a lot of good stuff to come out of it. Why do you do stuff like this?
Yeah, it's because I think for us, we're always intellectually curious. And what we've found in Carbon, and, I was kind of a zero acquisition with Spotlight Workpapers back in the day when Stu McLeod, came into Xero as well. I know Ian Vachin from way back. So it just seemed, we're culturally quite aligned. And they have a lot of kind of North American firms. We've got a lot of firms in New Zealand, Australia, UK. And it just felt like, hey, let's get together. Let's do this survey. We'd done one a couple of years ago. And let's just ask people what they're using, what services excite them. Are they moving their compliance-based fees to more of a mix of advisory, etc.? And I think you can see from that report, which garnered, I think we had 1,200 accountants fill that out from several hundred firms all around the world. So we did it because we were intellectually curious. We wanted to share that with everyone. We wanted to almost prove our hypothesis that there are more accountants wanting to engage in value-added conversations and service lines with their customers, not just do the grind work, not just do the work that they have to do, but the work that they maybe want to do or that their clients might want them to do. And we are seeing that. It's possibly been a little bit slower over the 12 years that Spotlight's been around. I suppose I thought accounting firms might scuttle along the disruption curve a little bit faster to doing more hybrid work. And whether we call it compliance plus advisory consulting, who cares? That stuff where we kind of swim away from the side of the pool a little bit and do things that might make us a bit uncomfortable at scale, like cash flow forecasting, like mentoring, like strategy, like KPIs, like visualization. And we're seeing it happen. You can see that with the results from the report. But you can see, to your earlier point, Rob, that it is a time of disruption, and there are lots of other factors impacting on what firms can do. Not only the changing complexity of hiring staff, but just the economic environment we're in. We thought COVID was bad, but we are, it might not be a capital R recession, but it's certainly a small R recession, I think, for all of us, and high interest rates, inflation, etc. That's been a once in a generation moment for us, hasn't it? I look back at some of the mortgage rates that we used to have, and
they don't know how good they had it back then or how good we've got it now. There's a lovely quote from you in this Global Advisory Trends report with a beautiful picture of you on it, Richard, and we'll put a link to this in the show notes that says, and I quote, "The current convergence between shifting technologies, consumer demand, and employee aspiration is providing a tantalizing point at which opportunities are emerging like never before." And it does seem like we're at a moment in time that you've captured something here, and we are on the verge of some great opportunities. Just tell us what's behind a quote like that.
Yeah, golly, it sounds like I'd had a coffee before that, doesn't it?
It's very profound.
I was just thinking, golly, who's that profound person? But what I was getting at really was the aspiration we should feel as accountants. And I know we're kind of, people roll their eyes at accountants, but who else is in the front lines with businesses all around the world, seeing the whites of their eyes, hearing about their sleepless nights, and who can make the most profound change if not us. And what tools or educational opportunities, changing technologies can we kind of deploy to help with this? And we have to be careful about buzzwords and you know, I remember an organization who I won't name kind of telling me that if I wasn't down with blockchain, I was going to get left behind and all this kind of stuff.
Yeah.
I thought, oh, I can probably do without that. But we know that AI has always been here, but is kind of emerging as we're expecting our tools and even our internal productivity and processes to be improved by artificial intelligence over time. So I think that's definitely one aspect where the more we can get conversant with AI opportunities and share those with our customers, that's really important for our profession. Obviously, even taking a step back and just doing a cash flow forecast or a budget with them might seem really simple, but how many accountants have kind of democratized their attitude towards giving all of their customers a budget and a cash flow forecast rather than just a squeaky 1 or 2%? The way we hire staff has changed. That was partly driven, of course, by COVID, but our staff do want to have work-life balance. They do want to have the option to work from home on occasion. We have a hybrid operation here at Spotlight. Depending on your role, you're either fully at home or partly in the office. You know, so there's all these different convergences of change that you can either rail against and be that kind of old man shouts at cloud, as some people in our profession are, or you can adopt and evolve and see it as a time of opportunity. So I'm actually really excited because you know, when I came out of university into this conservative profession, was expected to work all hours, have bosses that shouted at me, and questionable HR practices. And really my career progression was you had to wait for the partner who was older than you to die.
Yeah.
Get that, you know, that's all changed, and hallelujah. So it's an exciting time.
There's a great quote from Ian Vassin from Carbon, who obviously you did the report with, talking about innovation. And I'll say it in just a moment. We had a Corey Ramsey on our show just yesterday. He is the chair of the American Association of CPAs and CIMA. Right. And he oversees 700,000 accounting professionals worldwide. And I asked him what was top of his agenda, and he said innovation. And Ian quotes here, innovation is key. Continual innovation and flexibility are key to sustaining growth and improvement over time. You must constantly refine, improve, reinvent. And this is not a new message for the accounting profession, but they're not traditionally known for innovating and changing. But you're pretty bullish about the future is there for those who are bold and willing, and advisory particularly for those that are into innovation. And you're pushing that hard, aren't you?
Well, advisory is the low-hanging fruit, and you know, quite rightly, you know, we could be accused of pushing that agenda because we've got advisory-based software. But I was, you know, 10, 15 years before I owned Spotlight Reporting, I was in the trenches doing this.
You were banging that drum, yes.
Well, I'm a fellow of the Chartered Accountants of Australia and New Zealand. I've been doing it for a long time. I've run consulting at a big firm. So I was a believer long before I set up the software company, and the software company came out of a desire to create a disproportionate impact. You know, rather than just have a small coterie of great clients here in New Zealand, I wanted to be a provider of a tool that empowers accountants globally, and that's where Spotlight came from. So, you know, why wouldn't we be bullish in this time of opportunity? I've joked about the accounting profession being the, you know, the cockroaches that would survive the nuclear winter, which is, I suppose, relevant with Oppenheimer just coming out in the cinemas. But you know, we are kind of a constant in everyone's life in terms of whether it's a recession or a boom time, and how we use our relationship with the business owners of the world for good, I think is really, really important. So we're seeing ESG become much more important. We're seeing, and we'll have stuff to share on that over time, but we're seeing a growing awareness from our profession that, yeah, innovating our own practices and protocols is great, but we've actually got to take our customers on a journey as well. And that is being future focused. So of course, everyone who does forecasting and strategy and mentoring is looking ahead as much as backwards. But this planet that just broke, I read on the weekend, four climate related records in one, in one weekend, the hottest day, that the warmest ocean. I had to stop reading after a while because I was thinking of where's the next ship to get to the next habitable planet.
Crazy
We
times.
actually have to care about this stuff. We have to be bigger than our own profession.
Yeah. When you've looked at the firms and how progressive they are, you've said 65% of firms identify themselves as progressive, by definition offering mainly advisory services, and then there's hybrid firms below that. Is that a big number in your eyes, or is that small or not enough? Just put that into context for us.
Oh, I think that's a huge number. And look, of course, we're putting labels on our own practices.
Sure.
So there will be those who say, well, there might be some people who are maybe over-egging exactly where they're at. You could argue that because, although we went to a pretty wide gene pool, because a lot of the respondents will be kind of carbon users and spotlight, they're already buying and using software tools. They must be at least somewhere on the continuum of understanding and wanting to do advisory and kind of practice innovation. But I actually do think there's a lot of really useful work, a lot of innovative minds and people doing great advisory work out there. And even how compliance is done. So it doesn't have, I'm conscious there's labels that do trigger a few people.
Sure.
If you're doing compliance in the most effective way, using the best tools and the most reactive to the customer need and giving good advice, and you're doing that in a way that's customer driven and very mindful of how you train and educate your staff and using the best tools, well, that's still innovation. And arguably progressiveness. But I do feel that the 65% we're talking about are genuinely embracing new service lines and wanting to do great work that gets them out of bed in the morning as well. So I was very self-centered about starting my own firm and doing and proposing and then leading the consulting services at the firm I first worked in. I had a partner in crime partner there who was really keen to do that work too, because I wanted to do useful and interesting work. I wanted to get out of bed in the morning knowing that the work I was going to do that day would potentially transform the outcomes for customers. And I started.
That's the point. Let me dive on that for a moment, Richard. Sorry, but outcomes for customers, because advisory is thought of by some as the management reporting, the forecasting, those kind of forward-looking tools. But there is a step beyond that, isn't there? Beyond providing your clients with data and information and them actually acting on it and creating outcomes. That's an important distinction.
Absolutely. So that's where, right from the get-go, and I'm talking, this is early 90s, mid 90s, when I was first doing this consultancy work, we quite quickly hit on, it has to be about the action. We had action plans, we did annual strategic planning, and we did mentoring sessions. So when I ran Francis Consulting, when I left the big firm, lived in the UK for a few years, traveled around with my wife, came back, we started our own firm. And our package was, sure, you get your accounts and tax, well, that's just hygiene, but you get monthly mentoring, you get a spotlight report. So this is kind of the precursor to our online version. We'll do a forecast, we'll do a budget, we'll do an annual retreat with you and the stakeholders. That's what you get if you work with us. We didn't realize how before our time that was, until actually we got approached by a journalist who said, Cairns want to do a cover story on out there accountants, and you guys were the only ones we could find, so we got on the cover. There's a picture of us on the cover of Acuity magazine talking about advisory, kind of in I suppose it was about 2000, 2001.
You rebels.
Well, yeah, but it's common sense stuff, isn't it? I mean, we could see the light bulb go off for the clients when we started talking about. It was actually a very simple model, Rob. We just used to say, what are your 3 business goals? Your business over here. How about we talk about 3 financial goals for your family? And what are 3 personal goals? So things like your time and your stress and your holidays. And And that wasn't rocket science. That was just us kind of being human and saying what really matters to you, because we know your business does, and we've always just talked about that. But let's widen the lens. And you could see the light bulb going off for the clients, and they kept coming back, and they wanted to pay us more money, because we were helping them to deliver results across those three: business, financial, and personal.
I'm interested, Richard, in who's driving advisory. You say back in the day you were rock stars and rebels, and you were leading the client by the hand to say, look, let us ask you more questions. But we could argue now that the tech is driving advisory, and Spotlight, you're very innovative with your R&D. The client is driving it. They're asking more from their advisors. Some accountants themselves, these young guns and the new generation coming through, that are embracing the tech. So what do you feel are the key drivers pushing this forward?
I actually think there's more. There's a lot of customer-driven activity. So there's always and some people will go, oh yeah, but no one wants to pay anything more, and I don't accept that, because I mean I never found it hard to raise the average fee per client by just asking questions and being an active listener. So if you ask open-ended questions when you're scoping a client, they start providing almost the service options that are going to impact most for them. And I think with the generational change, so I'm a very pragmatic ex, you're getting the Ys and the millennials that coming out, and they just don't want to pay you top dollar for compliance only necessarily. Some of them want lifestyle, and they want the stuff now. But I even found that with the clients we had 10, 15 years ago, that we were finally asking the questions that they wanted to answer. So that was tick number one. Yeah, the software is really important as well, because we didn't have cloud software when I was in practice. I mean, we did towards the end. We used Xero when they came out. We moved all of our customers to Xero within about 6 months from the platform they were on. But now there's a plethora of choice, whether it's in the reporting, forecasting, consolidation space, or I mean, you can almost name any service line opportunity or any industry, and there's some pretty kick-ass software there that can help empower you. So software is not the whole answer, but it's part of the answer. The customer surge, the education and promotion of a wider optionality in your service offerings and your interactions with clients, that the likes of Xero and increasingly Intuit and other providers are talking about, has also helped educate and inspire accountants. I think we've all been to those Xero cons that have been lasers and lots of things going on, and
good entertainment.
Yeah, but it's also there has been that element where it's inspired people.
Well, there's a section on the report, Richard, on fee growth, where it says cash flow forecasting has been overtaken by virtual CFO and advisor work, and strategic planning and coaching. And you add to that section, it's a take on the Donald Miller story brand approach of be the guide and not the hero. And there is this sense of accountants are uniquely placed to hold the hands of their clients through murky times and uncertain economic conditions in being that guide. It's not about the accountant. It's not about the trusted advisor so much. It's creating better outcomes. And it's way beyond cash flow forecasting now.
Absolutely. So cash flow forecasting is table stakes.
Yeah. Gets you in the game.
Well, I've been told off for saying that every client should have a forecast as standard. If they have a business and you don't have you haven't done a cash flow forecast and a budget for them, you're negligent. So I'll put that out there again. I got told off last time I said it.
And are you big on daily bookkeeping as well, Richard, and that kind of closeness to the client and the numbers?
Well, in certain circumstances, yes, but I think the advent of the Xero and those kind of tools that anyone can kind of jump in and it's relatively intuitive, I think has removed some of the need in some circumstances for that. We didn't actually offer a bookkeeping service. We were much more about the monthly reporting cycle and mentoring cycle.
Okay.
So different strokes for different folks. But yeah, it's table stakes, isn't it? I mean, we should just be doing that as accounting professionals to then guide and advise and set goals. I think it's the next natural extension of doing that. Why provide future focused information if you're not going to help interpret and guide the customer with that data? and set some actions and kind of get that virtuous cycle going of report, forecast, review, discuss, act, and keep that going. And look, some of the very best accountants, and we can call them trusted advisors or whatever term you want to have, that I work with, and I know through Spotlight reporting, are actually, if you met them, you wouldn't call them rock stars. They're in their cardigans, they're quiet, they're conscientious, beautiful people, look like a traditional accountant, but they're actually doing amazing incremental work with their client base. So I think sometimes there's a view of advisors and trusted advisors as being these, they're driving the red convertible into the client car park. And I don't think that's anywhere near the truth. I actually think there's a lot of amazing work going on by what we would term traditional accountants.
Yeah. I was chatting to Mark Holton, who you will know, Smith Inc. and lovely
guy.
They
were early pioneers of all of this as well.
Yeah, definitely. Mark was ahead of the game. And he was saying part of the problem with accounting firms is their attitude to technology, not in embracing it, but in the way they buy it. So it's a gap, let's fill it, but they don't think too strategically about those decisions. You do a lovely bit of intel in your report about what's happening on the inside and which software and technology are you looking to implement in 2023 and beyond. And reporting, forecasting was top of the list. Practice management and operation was up there with automation, client management, but it is often purchased with a view to filling a gap and not how does it fit with our clients, with our current staff, with our current stack. So talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, one of the frustrations we have, and we know, customers have this too. Sometimes there's a qualification process. People choose their preferred flavor, whether it's practice management, reporting, forecasting, and they kind of think job done, tick. We then show up, for example, if they've chosen Spotlight, we show up. We've got a comprehensive, kind of education program, training program, trainers in each country. But sometimes getting the bandwidth post the purchase is really, really hard because, of course, accountants and their teams are busy. There's still a little bit of a side-eye view of training and this kind of time away from being on the tools. So I feel like there's a little bit of a gap between the promise of what an app stack brings to your firm and the actualization. And I'm not trying to put it all on the firms. Software companies aren't perfect either, but we, as a profession, we do need to get better at seeing training, education, and partnering with our chosen tools. Because let's face it, if you're a practice management tool or you're the chosen reporting forecasting tool, the ability for you to transform a firm is huge. But the flip side, if both parties aren't on the same page with what that implementation journey is like, is also, you can end up with a lot of redundant apps in your practice if you're not careful as well. So I think that's where the industry's still maturing a little bit, and there's opportunity there for firms to really grasp that training and education piece.
Well, it speaks well to how you end the report. As good research does, you've got one eye on what's happening now and the biggest challenges for the next 12 months, the future. And you say, not surprisingly, hiring staff remains the number one challenge facing firms, closely followed by economic impacts and work-life balance. Talent is very much a challenge for the moment, isn't it? And will be probably for the next few years.
Yeah, and look, I know, half the people watching this podcast will say, well, it's always been about people, and they're right.
Yeah.
I think we are, though, seeing with the impact of COVID, the lockdown, we've all kind of hired people who have never actually been in an office environment, and I think we're all struggling with, do we get them back in? What does hybrid look like? We do have, there's a lot of Gen Xers and co kind of running practices and things now who are maybe seeing a little bit of that, how do we deal with these millennials and Gen Ys coming through? They're a little bit different to us. With us doing more trying to leverage technology and potentially things like AI a little bit more, how do we hire the right people who can help with that? whilst recognizing that the human side, the soft skills, are still critically important, if not more, actually, I'd argue. Having people who can get out of the office and talk to other people, and I talked about how we became successful with active listening and open questions. Getting people to do that is hard, and I think we all recognize that, because we want technical geniuses who can knock out, that consolidation, but can also be incredibly warm, charismatic, and human with the customers. So that is a challenge. We did have a talent shortage there, didn't we, for a while? I mean, I think it's starting to free up slightly, but just as it's freeing up, we've got high interest rates, inflation, and wage levels are still, high and kind of bubbling along. So it's not actually that easy being an employer, is it?
It's very few people are having an easy time of it at the moment. But if we look ahead, and as we draw this to a close, you remain bullish about the future. You remain optimistic about the opportunities available to accounting professionals to affect the business outcomes. What are you most excited about for the next few years, Richard?
Yeah, look, I think, it's a little bit of a white knuckle ride now, but these things never last. Those of us, I can't quite tell down the lens of the camera how much grey hair you've got, but
I've got a few, yes.
With a bit of grey hair, we've probably, we've been through the GFC, we've probably been through the 90s recession. The world was going to end on Y2K, wasn't it? Yeah. So there's been all these different moments that we've got through. We'll get through this one as well. So I think we need to continue to be optimistic and invest in our people, our technology, challenge ourselves to be as relevant as possible to not only our existing clients, but the clients that are coming through in this kind of generational shift. And if we do that, then the profession can continue to be really relevant, doing powerful work. And of course, we want to entice people into our profession. And we're not going to do that if we can say you're going to have as much audit as you can eat, or you'll have as many tax returns as you can plow through, with all these deadlines. It's going to be enticing people in with, our firm has a model of transforming our clients' lives. Do you want to be part of that? And we're going to be a great place for you to work. And you're going to have the best tools. We're going to train and educate you. And you're going to want to roll out of bed in the morning because we're doing consequential work. We're doing, dare I say it again, useful shit.
If only accounting firms would wrap their employer brand around those messages, that would solve all of the problems in a heartbeat, Richard, because they'd increase headcount, they'd entice the best talent, they'd retain the best talent. They would be growing so they could afford the best tech and make good strategic decisions. What's going to happen to the firms that think they can just carry on doing what they're doing?
Yeah, I mean, it's a very resilient profession. So I'm certainly not one of those ones who thinks, the compliance houses who do things kind of the old way are necessarily going to fall over, because I think there's customers and employees where that's potentially the right fit. But I think, over time, drip by drip by drip, we're going to see change, and I see it as positive change, where we're innovating and evolving as a profession. Our firms are, the companies like ours that support firms are also evolving. You can't stand still. We're seeing the pace of change increase in almost all sectors of our lives, and it's scary and disrupting. But I think our profession has always been quite good at seeing the opportunity and swimming alongside it. And maybe this time we'll even get a bit ahead of the curve. We'll see.
And final question, Richard, we haven't mentioned it much, but throughout the report, there is a backbone of keeping the client close, client relationships, client management, serving them. What does CX, client experience, look like for you over the next few years? Because accountants, they're standing in the gap.
Yeah, I've said it earlier in this chat that we are uniquely placed. We're the GP for our customers, and the accountants that offer that CX. And when I was in practice, we got a number of clients. We didn't really actively market. We got a number of clients from firms around us. Ironically, some of whom used Spotlight reporting and other tools and did advisory, but they had never really had that conversation or that level of experience, and they came looking for that. So I think that is where the human element of what we do, we talk here about advisory is human, And I think as much as we can talk about AI and tools like Spotlight, we're a means to an end to get humans together, to have discussions and to help together collaborate on great outcomes. And there's a lot of firms that get that. There's quite a few coaches and advisors and influencers and educators like yourself too, who are preaching the same mantra, that so much of life and success, whether it's our professional or beyond, is about human connection. So I think more investment, hiring well, using the tools that can empower you to have conversations. It's a recipe for success.
Well, it's a great message and a lovely way to end. Richard Francis, founder and CEO of Spotlight Reporting. It's been a joy to talk to you today. Thanks so much for your time and your insights.
Thank you for having me on.